Dear panel, allowing bride importing essentially means that we are allowing a rich white man to purchase vulnerable women for themselves as property. This is illegitimate and will never actually improve the life quality of these women. The women we're talking about in the surveys are looking for an escape from poverty, but they don't realize that they're trading off all of their life's possibilities for self-determination. In most cases, this means the complete dominance of the woman by the man who purchases them, and this in no cases is a happy, perfect marriage that we are talking about. Notice that these aren't women who we're talking about aren't refugees of war or they aren't victims of persecution. We say that they have alternative ways of finding asylum in those countries, but they're rather women who are just looking for a way to improve their life quality. However, often these are the women who don't just like meet the criteria for immigration. But notice that the criteria for immigration that we set, like, I don't know, having some kind of a prospect for a job, having some sort of an education, or having some money in your bank account, are set in place in order to protect the immigrant, in order for them to have some kind of a prospect of life in the country where they're immigrating to, and in order for them to be justified in order to protect them. But we think that when we're allowing bride importing, these women are actually subject to abuse, and they aren't fulfilling the purpose of immigration because they're just actually making their lives worse. And for this exact reason, we need to ban this thing. In my speech, I want to do two things. Firstly, I want to talk about why this is a completely illegitimate choice and why women are giving away their bodily autonomy. But secondly, how they're always going to be subject to abuse and how their lives are actually going to be worse in a world where this exists. Starting with my first argument. I think that there are three reasons why women can never make this as a legitimate choice when they decide to subject themselves to bride importing. Firstly, they most likely don't have enough information about the man they're going to marry. It's usually a man they meet on the internet who is very easily can talk whatever they want about themselves, so they never really know what or who they're getting involved with, so they really have no prospect of what their life is actually going to look like, and they just, because they want to believe that it's good, they're most likely going to just ignore anything that is bad or it is being like hidden from them if the man, I don't know, somehow seems dominant or abusive. But secondly, they have a false illusion of the West being something very nice, no thank you. They have this sense of American dream, that their life somehow is always going to be better in those Western faraway countries, that they're going to have all the riches and luxury, as this is portrayed to them in the media, and they think that their life in that case is always going to be better, and it's very easy for the men to abuse the narrative that these women have, and to lure them into the situation and into the position of subjecting themselves and just like kind of becoming property. And we think that this is a reason why women are inclined to make this choice based on false information that they have. But furthermore, thirdly, they are usually desperate in the moment, or probably they're coming from a low socioeconomic background. We are going to concede that. But this means that they are unable to make a rational risk calculation. They see that, like, I don't know, moving to a new country as some kind of like an immediate benefit they're going to get. It seems very easy for them, but they just don't realize the much bigger long-term harms that we're going to tell you about in the second argument. So it's very hard for them to actually make this risk calculation combined with the previous reasons of how they exactly have no information, and hence they are unable to make this. So these three mechanisms show that these women are always going to make a coerced choice, and we don't think that the state should never actually allow to make a coerced choice, that these women have no ability to reverse because they cannot get out of the situation once they already put themselves into this situation. But even if opposition managed to prove that this was not a coerced choice and these women had this bodily autonomy, we still don't agree. We think obviously bodily autonomy exists to an extent, but what these women are doing is they're basically giving away their bodily autonomy. They're giving away their own right to self-determination when they are just saying that the man can control every aspect of their life. And because this is the case, they no longer have the bodily autonomy in the future, and this principle doesn't apply in this case. No, thank you. We similarly also don't allow people selling themselves to slavery, even if they have the bodily autonomy to do so in the first place. The long-term harm and the reason that they're not going to have bodily autonomy later after they have done this decision is very analogous, and the reason why we don't allow people to make this an illegitimate choice for themselves, because we want to protect the interests of these people and we want to protect their right to self-determination. So because of this reason, this is already banned because of its inherent coercive nature. But before moving on to my second argument, I would happily take a point of information. Okay, moving to my second argument on how this actually works for the women. We say that the women are always going to be subject to abuse. Why is this the case? We need to look at what these men are actually going to look like who are going to enact this policy. But before I talk about that, I will take your POI.
Given desperation, poor information, and the false illusion of a Western dream, aren't all choices to immigrate to a Western liberal democracy illegitimate on your side?
No, we don't think all choices are made illegitimate. You should have much more information about where you're going. You aren't in a desperate situation if you don't have the full solution. We think that the women that you are protecting necessarily don't have this information, and this is what makes them distinct from any kind of other types of immigration that they could access. But talking about abuse and why they're always going to be like, the men we are talking about are the ones who aren't just looking for a life companion, because otherwise they would have gone out, I don't know, download this Tinder or find other ways how they could get a person to marry. What they are doing is they're willingly giving up some kind of financial benefits they have, because they're making this trade-off that they think that they can purchase something in exchange. They're not doing this for charity, and you need to remember this, because those are the people who want to have something, want to own something. For example, this results in them being often dominant or abusive or controlling because they have thought that they have given something to this woman and now they deserve something in return. And for this reason, we think that in most cases, these men are always going to be very abusive towards those men, and even if not physically, then always also emotionally, and so completely restricting those women from having some kind of a say in their life. And we say that women are unlikely to get out of those situations. Firstly, because it's unlikely that they're going to get financial independence. The men are always going to control them. They're usually purchasing these women for themselves to have them as housewives. And furthermore, these women usually have very low possibilities to ever gain any kind of an employment. So we think that they just don't have the money to go away from the man. But secondly, they have no social safety net. They probably have no friends, or all of the friends that they're going to have are going to be controlled by the man. The man knows everyone who this woman is talking to, or furthermore, their family is living far away and they cannot somehow contact them, so they don't have any kind of a social safety net. And thirdly, there is a change in mentality. They feel threatened by the man when they're constantly subject to physical and emotional abuse. Furthermore, they think that this is the normal life that they're living. They feel that they are unable to sustain themselves when they take themselves away from that situation. And furthermore, they feel like they owe a debt to this man. So even if all of the tangible things like resources and friends were possible, their mentality is different. It doesn't allow them to be. Even if opposition wants to claim that that legislatively they have the possibility to divorce, they have the possibility to go to, I don't know, women's shelters. These are things that won't happen. Firstly, the man will never consent to actually divorce him, because otherwise they wouldn't have purchased this woman in the first place. But secondly, the women are afraid of doing it. Because they could go to they will never make this risk calculus of actually leaving behind anything that they have. So there is really no happy ending. We already see victims of domestic abuse not leaving those places because they are afraid, and we think that this is always going to be an analogous case. The comparison is on their side, they're maybe going to have some kind of a tangible, materialistically better life. But the women are always going to be subject to mental abuse, and they're always, in the majority of cases, going to have a worse off life. So if you believe that the era of humiliating, objectifying women is over, you need to vote for Proposition.
Usually I begin my speech with saying that I'm proud to oppose, but really I am not. Because this is not a choice that any woman should make in an ideal world. But to be able to make even more choices in the future, this is a choice that women have to make, and you cannot let the fear-mongering on such proposition detract from this choice. Bear with me, my setup today will take a bit more time and a bit more work, because proposition was incredibly evasive and glib with their conception of what exactly the process of acquiring an imported bride looks like. How does importing of wives work? Men who want wives go through agencies where they pay a huge sum, upwards of tens of thousands of dollars. This money is then split amongst the agency and the wife, which will happen because agencies must convince women to be wives by offering sufficient financial remuneration, for example. Wives can choose between possible locations and husbands who will then choose the wives. Usually, husbands and wives will have to meet multiple times before the matching is confirmed. Finally, legal procedures for an international marriage will be set in place. In the US, for example, bride agencies and immigration authorities will also conduct background checks on both parties. Do not let propositions say that this is an unregulated process. It is usually very lengthy, it is very complicated. Both parties have to go through multiple dates, for example, to assess the compatibility. But crucially, women can choose to pull out of the particular transaction at any juncture. Because these agencies are in the business of marriage, they need to ensure that both sides are happy in the long run in order to have a reputation, in order to have a successful business. So if you sell a wife to a man and the wife is unhappy with him in the long run, then this business will just go bust because they have no reputation of having successful marriages in the long run. So what happens on our side? We think that the importing of wives should remain legal. Obviously, no thank you, we will continue to stand for the rights of married couples, like against abuse and marital rape, and we will continue to actively support the upholding of such laws through pro bono, divorce lawyers, and prosecution. This looks like marriage registries that can also track legal marriages, especially those involving imported wives, for example. Crucially, do not let propositions disingenuous characterization of the process of acquiring imported wives to stand in today's debate. Because it is not as what they want to say. It is not as if the women cannot see their men. They can. They have to go on multiple dates before they can even assess whether they want to enter into this transaction or not. Given the broader setup out of the way, two rebuttals. First, on choice, and second, on whether women are harmed. First, on choice. First proposition gives us three mechanisms, which really just boiled down to one, which is on the coercive nature, which I've already disputed in my setup is not true. But let's just deal with it anyway. First, they tell us there's a false illusion of the American dream that women are sold. Second, they told us that these women are desperate in the moment and they lose their rational risk-making ability as their third mechanism. I think that's very insulting on proposition to say that these women don't know what they're getting into. Because these women know what it is like to leave their family in their home country to go to a foreign land with another man. But they make this active choice, and I'll further catch with this in my first argument, why this choice is legitimate. Second argument on whether women are harmed. And recognize that this second argument, no thank you, from proposition is entirely hinged on the premise that all men will be abusive, that every single husband in this relationship will be bad. My setup told you how women have a choice to make, and if they assess that the men that they're getting married to are abusive, they can pull out and they can reject at any juncture if they make the trade-off of thank you and weigh that the abusive tendencies outweigh the economic enfranchisement that they want to make. So to say in the second argument that all women who have no safety net, who have no ability to socialize with other people, is just not true. In my second argument, I will prove why it is even worse on side proposition, no thank you. My first argument is on how we enable a woman's choice. My second argument is on how we protect women financially. And my third argument, my second speaker will talk about increasing international accountability. First argument, on the choice that women deserve to make. The thesis of this argument is that the decision to become an imported bride is one that women should be allowed to make, and this is why I continue to clash with such proposition's first argument about how this choice is illegitimate. Premise, we allow women to make choices as long as there is no third-party harm, because the criteria of a ban by the state is often third-party harm. So women who choose to become imported brides do not create harm for society. But if anything, we think that women deserve the right to choose what they want to do with their own body. They withhold the autonomy over their own self. I think most of us in this room can never fully empathize with the plight of these women, and it is regrettable that these women are born into poverty. But the greatest injustice we can inflict upon them is to deny them this avenue of economic upliftment and to go with such proposition to value judge the choices that these women make. Crucially, what is the solution on our side? We need to analyze the psyche of women who choose to become imported brides, and don't let them get away with saying that this is a choice made in a desperate moment. Because I think it is flippant for proposition to just sweep aside the choices. Women do this for very strong reasons that are completely legitimate. Many of them are born into places of poverty, as they say, economic disenfranchisement. They grew up in rural communities that lack access to food and water, to a safe society, to greater opportunities. And often, women become imported brides and want to go to these developed countries because the standard of living there is far better. Safer societies with functional police forces, greater access to necessities, necessities, for example. That is why often they willingly choose to become imported brides, because they make the legitimate decision that the immigration they get via the marriage is something that they want, that they can go there to get work, that the money that is paid to them can go to their families. Second argument on reducing human trafficking. And here's where I agree with all their arguments all the moments about how these women do not have social safety nets. And I'll further prove how it is on proposition where women lack these social safety nets. But before I move on, yes sir.
If it is true that women live in poverty and in rural areas, how can they ever fully understand the full implications of what it means to become an imported?
So I'm just going to outright reject this very insulting characterization that these women don't know what they get into. I already told you at the top of the speech that often this is a very hard choice that women have to make. And when they do make it, it's because they realize that the situation at home is so dire that they willingly make this choice. Moving on to my second argument about reducing human trafficking. And the thesis of this argument is that proposition creates even more illegal trafficking of women. Premise: in the absence of that legalization, two forms of desperation still exist. One, on the part of men who seek imported brides, their desire for a partner still exists. What they choose to turn to a proposition, therefore, is getting women illegally. They choose to smuggle women over borders, trade through illegal traders, or they just falsify at customs and say that they genuinely love the woman and there's no financial transaction whatsoever. But second, on the part of women themselves, the places where they came from are probably quite severe. On proposition, they will choose still to seek opportunities elsewhere, but they end up often smuggling themselves into far worse alternatives. Prostitution rates, for example, they are far more coercive than these sort of legal imported wives that happens on our side. Proposition makes it worse there, because when something bad happens, for example, these women cannot report to the authorities because they do not appear on legal immigration records. They'll just be turned away by authorities because technically they are not supposed to be in this country because they came in illegally. This means that they cannot access the entire spectrum of state welfare that is granted to people who get citizenship or who get immigration status, for example. They cannot go to the hospital if they are injured because they do not appear on citizenry records. They cannot go to the police if anything bad happens to them because they just do not exist in the country on official records. That is when on their side, women cannot qualify for social safety nets even more. Do not let them get away with the spurious analogy that women are selling themselves into slavery. Because if anything, it is on proposition where even more women are trafficked into slavery, when on their side the demand still exists, but they fail to regulate it because they choose to acknowledge that it is a legal business. And often, these marriages actually function perfectly normally, almost like any other conventional marriage, because these men are looking for partners who are on equal status. They're looking for them for an emotional connection. That is why, despite all the setup that I said, these men do have an incentive to be nice to their wives as well. On our side, we believe that we enable dignity through choice we oppose.
Crucial words in the info slide that we received is that these men are giving this money to these women or are sponsoring their immigration into these countries in exchange for marriage. So this is a trade for these men. They're buying these women in order to have someone besides them that they have power over. That they are giving these women the sole opportunity, as Team Singapore once described to, of getting into that country and therefore giving that man the opportunity to earn authority over that woman who is vulnerable and who is from a lower background, who doesn't have the means to protect themselves. I have never been prouder to propose in order to protect that woman. In my speech, I'm going to make 2 points rebuttal on the same issues we talked about in our first speech. First about coercion, and second about abuse, and then I'm going to move on to my own extension about what should be the state's stance on female subjugation. But before that, one extraneous point to rebuttal on their extension. They try to tell us that this practice is become more prevalent simply because of the fact that we will have more illegal immigrants under our side than there would be under theirs. Presumably, their side is already giving this opportunity to women as an opportunity.
Point of information.
Like, we are already telling you about women who have, that some women can immigrate into these countries because the standards aren't so high. Therefore, we don't really think therefore we don't see why immigration shouldn't be an option for these women in a different way. But even if it weren't an option for these women, we think that it's good because of the framework that of current standards of immigration existing in order to protect these women and in order to protect new immigrants and to give them safety at the first time when they move into those countries, because otherwise they are going to become able to be abused. A lot of people are going to have more authority over them. Now moving on to my own points in rebuttal. Firstly, on the points about coercion. They try to frame this argument out of this debate by saying that we have agencies that do this, and these agencies are so great that no coercion can ever exist. Firstly, even if this isn't done on the internet, as we told in our first speech, we think that these men can still finally choose the impression they leave on those women. They aren't going to be meeting for years, which is usually the case in marriages, so these women probably don't know how these men actually behave, can't learn to know the character of that man. These men can still choose the impression they leave, can nitpick the examples or the sides of themselves that they want to highlight to that woman, and can always leave a sense of security in that woman. They especially can do this because all of this is agency run, as they say. These women presumably then have no reason to ever have any doubts about the things that are being done to her, the things that are being told to her, because this is also controlled. These agents presumably should be doing everything right. This gives that woman a higher sense of security, which they don't have to doubt the man, and are going to be willing to accept or believe the things that this man is telling to her, the ways in which this man is presenting himself. But moreover, they blame us for being insulting towards these women, but the only reason they give to that is that these women know the impact of leaving their family behind. No, thank you. This still isn't a response to the rest of our 2 points of analysis, where we told you that women are going to be able to have a sense of instant gratification from moving to a different country, that all of the problems they are describing are going to end for that woman, and already many people are trying to immigrate under our side, therefore showing that people are making these decisions all the time, and these women will simply have an easier time making this choice, because they know that they will be paid, they won't have any expenses, and the risks are lower because someone else is helping them with this process of immigration. But moreover, on the point about family, they really want to talk about that it's necessary that they respond to a point of illusion of happiness that exists in these countries. These are the people who are falling victim to the American dream because they don't have basic things such as police forces in their country, as psycho opposition tells you. Therefore, they are likely to idealize to have a perfect understanding of what is going on in Western countries, because this is something that they've never been accustomed to, and the level of prosperity that they've never experienced. They're likely to believe that they can bring their family there instead of leaving them behind, because they think that everything is going to be immensely better for them, and that's the characterization that they needed to engage with, but crucially didn't. Before going on to my next point,
would you ban unemployed women from ever getting married?
No, this isn't the case. We think that poor women can get married in those countries. These poor women can get married if these men are trading them money, which is the thing that these women crucially need in exchange for getting married. This impropriety exists if this man is actually in love with these women. That's fine. You need to prove why these men aren't doing this explicitly for the fact of having that movement, and why they wouldn't do it out of love in this instance if you describe these men as so great. Which brings me to my next point about abuse. These aren't men who are looking for a companion. They are buying a woman, which means that they inherently don't have much respect for women in the first place, because they're willing to treat women as property. But it's even more disgusting than that. They are shopping for their wife. They're looking through a assortment of women to choose the one that they best like and that they think is going to be the best fit for them. But moreover, the more information doesn't deal with the fact that these men are willing to go to extreme lengths, that they're willing to provide these huge sums of money to have that person in their life. These really aren't the men who are looking for love with these women, because otherwise they wouldn't be doing any of those things, but would be inherited instead. Be trying to create love in that woman, or would be trying to actually create a relationship. They're skipping all of these things and they're simply getting the woman that they now have in their homes. The fact that they can go to an agency means, like, they say that these women can go to an agency once abuse occurs. Notice the authority that this man gains in the eyes of this woman. All of the benefits to that woman come from that man, as trying to position exclusively itself during this debate. This woman can't leave this man behind, because otherwise they're losing all of their benefits. This man has immense authority in the eyes of this woman, and therefore they're more likely to abuse the power that they have over that woman, simply because of the fact that they already don't think very highly of that woman. And we think that they agree to all of this in their extension, but they tell you that men are going to be getting these import rights illegally. If men are willing to go to crime, then I think that these men inherently want these women, and they're willing to abuse the power that they will inherently have over those women, simply for the fact that they already don't think highly of women, and therefore these women who don't have any safety mechanisms are going to be subjugated to abuse. They didn't respond to the reasons why women don't have any safety nets, other than beginning at the point about agency. We've told how this agency doesn't really work, and this man still has authority over that woman. Finally, my own extension about how the state should react to female subjugation. We think that the state should expect very clear things from a marriage. Marriage should be something that exists between equal partners who complement each other, rather than one being inferior to the other. We think that both sides need to have freedom, and neither should be completely dependent from the other. We think that we're already trying to deal with abusive marriages in which these criteria that I just mentioned are not being fulfilled. We are putting in place things such as women's shelters, we're prohibiting marital abuse and marital rape due to the reasons we think that abusive marriages shouldn't exist, and the state should always condemn these types of relationships. If we as a state knew which marriages end in abuse, we would never allow these marriages to happen under our side, because we think that it's a bad calculus or a bad choice for people of either sex once they enter these relationships where they inherently will be abused and left without their rights. In the instance of import rights, we think that we can know beforehand that there is a huge chance of women being abused by the men who always have higher power and have a higher authority than these women ever will. Therefore, we think that we have a moral imperative to prevent import marriages from happening. The state has to protect citizens and ensure the fair treatment of everyone, but allowing unfair treatment to happen makes the state complicit in these acts. But moreover, to work towards ending abusive relationships taking place at the moment already, it is necessary to take a harsh line. This is a clear example of abuse, and the state fails to take action, and if the state fails to take action and unambiguously prohibit the worst example of marriages, then we think that we're giving more leeway and more normalization to other abusive marriages because the state hasn't taken action in this one instance. Singapore must show why we, in this instance, can refrain from trying to achieve equitable relationships, and why it is ever would be righteous to treat these women in these horrible ways. I'm very proud to support it.
Before I move on with my speech, I'd like to point out that side proposition has dropped Matthew's second argument. And the reason as to why it's important that they drop this argument is because at the point in which they acknowledge that on their side of the house, a black market occurs in which it is significantly less regulated, then all of the harms they're talking about on their side of the house become amplified. And I think it's important as well that their second speaker's argument on the government's duty to prevent this is completely hung on the logic of their first speaker's argument that the abuse will occur in the first place. We've already given you reasons as to why we dispute this on our side of the house. So 2 questions in this speech. 1, on the choices of the women involved, and 2nd, on the black market. So first, on the choices of the women involved. We give you reasons as to why they are unlikely to be abused. I would point out that a singular, very flat characterization that we got from proposition was that the reason as to why people choose to buy brides is because of the fact that they just really like to own women. That's not true. There are other circumstances. In places like China, for example, that face an extreme shortage of women as compared to men, Often, it is because of the fact that there are social and societal pressures over the fact that you need to have a wife in order to be accepted in your society. Another possibility could be, for example, the fact that they may not, as they say, be easily accessible to dating and other such things, but rather they might just want companionship in these ways. There are multiple other reasons as to why one would choose to order a male or a bride, apart from the reasons that they say on their side of the house. And I'd like to point out, if someone was as bad as they like to say, then I suggest to you that there are other alternatives that don't involve literally marrying someone and having the obligation to pay for everything that you do. A good example of this would be, say, going for prostitution on their side of the house, because that's where you can accrue all the benefits that they want without any of the costs. The fact that they are not doing this and committing themselves to this relationship suggests that there are other reasons as to why they're doing so in the first place. This very nicely brings you to all of the reframing that Matthew did in his first opposition speech, which is why the relationship isn't as domineering as they say. Because the point of a relationship, especially marriage, is not just one of domination, but may also be one of companionship. And that's why often marriage agencies choose to sell the idea that we can help you find a bride or a compatible person in the first place. That is why the man is an incentive not to hide himself, as they would like to say, but also as an incentive to be as truthful and honest as possible. All of these reasons are structural reasons as to why agencies and other such groups have every incentive to be transparent and have every incentive to ensure that they are able to ensure that this abuse does not happen in the first place, because they want their clients to be satisfied with what happens to the process. They get a few responses from this. The main response is they are harmed because of their belief in the American dream. So I just have to point out that there are millions of women around the world who choose not to immigrate immediately to the developed world. The reason for this is because of the fact that leaving literally everything that you know, your family, your friends, and every comfortable aspect of your home is something that is an incredibly high barrier to occur. The fact of the matter is not an easy choice that people choose to make, but the fact of economic duress. The example of which suggests that many of the time the reason as to why they choose to go to these places is because of the fact that they want to accrue the benefits of living in a developed country. The responses I'm going to point out is the alternative really isn't better. And I think it's important that they fail to respond properly to Bharat's point of information. When Bharat asked them whether or not they will allow unemployed women to marry, I suggest that the same fact that they say yes is a massive problem, because that is all the reasons as to why exists on their side of the house, all the problems occur. The fact that they said yes concedes to the fact that they believe that even women who are poor are at least able to make basic choices about the lives that they lead. But the further extension of this is, I'm not sure that the comparative in the developing world is any better. The fact of the matter is that in the many parts of the developing world, women get married off precisely for economic reasons. And the fact that a family of a woman is allowing her to do this in the first place suggests that under sufficient duress back home, she might very well go through a marriage in the very same circumstances. The comparative, however, is that the developing world is significantly more patriarchal and has significantly less support structures that exist in the first place. Meaning that all of the problems that they're talking about, the comparative is likely to get significantly worse. So to summarize, to be exceedingly clear, there is no incentive for these men to abuse these women, but more crucially than that, these women are making a legitimate choice. Before that, please.
Even if we take your best case and say that the men are interested in companionship, then the money is still there in order to lure the women into that situation. So there is never going to be an equal choice when money is involved. The partners aren't equal.
Okay, I'm going to explain to you why they are in my second question on the alternative. Here I want to point out that such proposition does not engage in Matthew's argument about the black market. And the reason why this is important is, if it is true that the demand for these women remains the same on both sides of the house, it suggests that the people who want this situation are likely to acquire them through way more unscrupulous means. So for example, human trafficking and other such methods. The problem therein lies that if these women are being abused in these relationships, they are unable to make the way up, that is to say, look, I'm being abused right now, and that's significantly worse than the benefits that I hope to come here for, and get social support and networks from the very developed country that wants to protect these people in the first place. The comparative on their side is that these women are unable to report this abuse because of the fact that they're illegal in these countries in the first place, and if they do end up reporting it, they will be sent back home, or worse yet, jail. So to be very clear, the other comparative is that they get human trafficked. And what this looks like is, often they get told that they're going to these places for a better life, but in the reality of the situation, they often get sent to prostitution rings, and other such things, they had absolutely no layers of accountability. So to be clear, we didn't win the debate on this clash alone because we proved to you that it made it so much worse for women. So I'm now going to move on to my team's third and final argument about how we get greater accountability for this system. And here, I'm going to clash even more with that case. I'm going to prove to you why, when imported brides are legalized, we get significantly more and greater international attention to the issues that occur. The first premise of this argument is that countries where these imported brides come from care about the well-being of their own people. I mean, generally speaking, this is true. I'll take you in a second, because most nations care about the people that come from there. And this is often because of the mandate from the people and pressure from citizens in these nations. Before that, yes.
If it's true that the only thing these men want is companionship or some social interaction, then why do they opt for spending thousands of dollars instead of creating a Tinder account or going to a Facebook chat group?
Often, I've already told you that in certain countries there faces a situation where men significantly more than women, and often there may be others mitigating circumstances that none of us will be able to say. They may not necessarily be able to access those situations. Moving on. So, this means that they care about the people and the citizens overseas. So this looks like a good example where the Vietnamese government in the status quo is currently pressuring the Singaporean government to increase its regulation over mail-order brides and to protect their own citizens to a greater extent. The reason as to why only with this policy that they are able to do this is because it becomes clear that the recipient country has a system of accountability and has the ability to change the problems that exist in the status quo. Because only then would it be reasonable on the international scale to say, look, there is a problem where the people from my country are going to yours and they're systemically and structurally getting abused. Moreover, they might say, okay, but they can generally prosecute against human trafficking. The problem with that is that that is actually a very wide-ranging and incredibly complex issue. Unfortunately, the comparative is mail-order brides, where if you have your registry and know exactly who are the ones in your country, it's a very specific issue that your country is able to solve. This is important because it means you get greater international and diplomatic pressure, because governments are now actually able to take concrete steps to pressure nations or receiving nations, and nations that have these brides are able to make a strong ability to actually solve the problem in the first place. We enable dignity through choice. We're very proud to oppose.
8 minutes, 5 seconds.
Honourable panel, prostitution is not an analogous case because it is not, as we're understanding, the power dynamics between the two people are not really there. We think that an actually analogous case is, for example, child marriage. In instances where the person who is married to the husband does not actually have any tangible way of changing the way of how they live, or the fact that the power dynamic of the husband is much larger than the overall the overall power that the child has in these instances. We think that the problem of Singapore in this debate is that they haven't actually engaged with our analysis. Talking about things like the fact that men can go to agencies and that women can pull out an injuncture, not actually analysing about the fact that when we always have these unbalanced power between these two individuals, then it is always very likely that abuse can occur. And in instances where the women are very vulnerable, the extent of harm that can happen to these women is very large, and this is already a reason why we should ban it. Before I move on to my main pledges, where first of all I will show you why this is a legitimate choice, and then secondly I'll talk about why the likelihood of abuse is so large. I'm going to look at two sort of rebuttals about their case, two things that I don't really think are going to fit into this debate. Firstly, the international attention points, and secondly, illegal trafficking. Firstly, about international attention, no thank you. We already think that this issue is quite problematic, and that obviously there is quite large international attention to deal with this issue. Then never proved why the incentive of the international community isn't very large to deal with these issues now anyway, and it didn't prove why the incentive would actually get much larger under their side. But now, secondly, why isn't illegal trafficking actually important in this debate? We think that that this is almost never a choice for these women anyway, and that they are often actually kidnapped, and we think that overall the sort of human trafficking problem is going to stay the same. But also, firstly, if we think that we can actually regulate things like marital rape to a great extent, we can also regulate hidden black markets to a very large extent. Or the fact that secondly, this importing brides is already illegal in many countries, and there exists no huge black market in these countries to do this, so we don't think this is really true. However, even if there is more illegal trafficking, then we think that this still shouldn't be enough to win this debate. Because if we prove that this practice overall is harmful, like the use of heroin, then it is still enough to justify banning it, even if it creates a sort of black market. They never proved why this illegal trafficking should be so important in this debate. But now, moving on to the much important flash about why it is given a choice. No, thank you. They just say that it is insulting to women to say that women don't understand the implications and that overall maybe something when women go to agencies. We think that just stating these things isn't enough to deal with our analysis. Because let's look at the three mechanisms that we provided you from the first speech on, and why this analysis doesn't actually rebut these things. First of all, we said that these women don't have enough information. The fact that there is still an unbalanced knowledge gap between these agencies and women. The fact that poverty in rural villages means that it is likely that these full implications are not actually understood. For example, what support systems are actually available in their host countries? What are the laws in these countries? Especially if they already said that women can't choose what country they go to, it's going to be extremely difficult for women to understand the implications of what they're getting into. But secondly, the fact that there is a false illusion. This obviously states the fact that women have a false illusion about what sort of country they're also getting into, what sort of life they're going to have, if we already have this overall understanding of the American dream, or like we're living in the West. No, thank you. We also think there's always going to be an incentive of the agency to propagate this view, to propagate the fact that there is an American dream, that living in the West is better, because this way they get more women into the agency who actually wishing, no thank you, to become import brides. But third mechanism, we said that these women are desperate. The fact that they can't make an actual rational choice in these instances, there was no response from information. No thank you. So we think that these women can't actually make any completely legitimate choice in these instances. But what did they also say? They said that just in their first speech that women have the right to their bodily autonomy, completely ignoring the analysis that we already gave in our first speech, that in these instances these women are giving away their right to self-determination. No thank you. The fact that in instances where they put themselves into positions where they can be very easily abused by their husbands, then in these instances they are already giving away their right to self-determination, and this isn't enough of justification. Also, our extension is incredibly important, and it is important to note that it works even if they prove why women would get some sort of benefits. No, thank you. Because we said that even if women get benefits, the state can still never be complicit in the selling and subjugation of women if we have understood that this is something that we should never be actually, something that we should always be fighting and tackling. No, thank you. Moving on to the second and most important part of this debate, why it is likely that these women are going to be abused. In their first speech, they said that proposition has to prove that all women are going to be abused, but this is obviously an unfair burden. What we had to do in this debate will show you that a very large majority of women are going to be abused, or they're going to be in risk of being abused. And we think that we've already done that, because our characterization, I think, is more realistic in debate. Because the fact that when we look at what sort of women we are dealing with, then they are not going to be looking for loving companions, otherwise they would obviously not be buying their wives, they would be going out into social spaces trying to find people who they can emotionally connect with. The sort of people that we're looking at who want to buy their wives are people, no thank you, who want to subjugate their wives. If they couldn't do this without the power dynamics that this practice provides, they can only make these women into the house owners that they want to in instances where they make sure that these women have no overall social security networks around them, no thank you, and can't actually get out because in instances where they might divorce, they have no real support system, so they can't actually get by without that husband. This is why it's so likely. But then they say things like this won't happen as women can meet men. This obviously isn't true. Abuse in marriages obviously occurs even when these people have known each other for a much longer time than just a few times. We also think it is in the interest of an abusive husband to hide their true intentions, even if they want to subjugate the women, which I already said is a very large incentive. Also, what is most important is that they didn't respond to the fact that the degree of vulnerability is huge. The fact that in these instances, the men have an incentive to abuse, and this is really easy to abuse these women for the reasons that we already outlined in the first speech. We think that for all of these reasons, we can never really allow this sort of situation to occur, and we should ban this practice. Before I move on, yes.
If you claim women are so desperate to go to the developed world, do you think that they can still find ways to do so?
As we already told in our first speech, we think that there are other ways of immigrating, and in instances where they can't immigrate, it is because because the immigration rules bar them from getting into that country. And as we already said, this is very beneficial because immigration rules say things that the fact that you have to have employment, or you have to have some money in your bank account. And in instances where women can't get into the country with these sorts of immigration rules, then obviously they are very vulnerable. They are going the extent of overall abuse that can occur to women who don't have employment or don't have a lot of money is obviously going to be a lot larger. But now what is important also to understand is that Team Singapore has never proved that the harm that women receive in these marriages, if they were to receive it, is going to be less than living in poverty, because they needed to show that they are actually making these women's lives better, or that these women will live better lives if they wanted to win this debate. And I'm going to prove to you why this is wrong, even if they prove that some sort of comfort increases. Because when we look at these women who are living in poverty, at the country of origin, we think that women can still maximize their happiness as they have free will. They can still choose who are their friends, they can still choose what sort of community they live in, they can still choose, for example, hobbies, and we think that to some extent also can choose what their job is. These sorts of things actually allow women to maximize the happiness that they can have in these regions. But actually, at these host countries, when they are under the subjugation of their husbands, they have no free will. They can't decide over these sorts of things. They can't maximize their happiness. This is the reason why women will always, or in majority of cases, be less happy under the subjugation of their husband than in living in the areas where they originated from. Thank you.
Their case goes something like this. Because the woman is desperate, the choice is coercive. Then we ask, how do women get out of desperation on your side? And they say, oh, this desperation really isn't that bad. I'm sorry guys, you can't say these two things at the same time. Because if these women are not desperate, then they give up their entire principal case from first speaker. If they are desperate, then they do have to accept all the harms we enumerated in Matthew, which they haven't engaged with all the way down the bench. This tension already tears down a big portion of their case. And I want to note that the rest of my speech is going to take them at their best, ignoring this glaring contradiction. I want to talk about three things. First, is it legitimate? Second, does this help the vulnerable? Third, do they really change everything? I'm going to spend the less time on the last category because that's where most of our material from first speaker still stands. The first thing they say on legitimacy is that it's an illegitimate choice because of poor information and illusions of the West. We took this down right at the top, but Matthew told you that this poor information isn't systemic to important rights and it was easy to change. And second, by that logic, that you will ban the immigration of anyone from a poor country to a rich country. That was a POI we asked in first block and we're still waiting for an answer. No thank you. What protections did we say existed? We told you that there were multiple dates between these individuals to assess their compatibility, and therefore you can see the potential husband has abusive tendencies. Their response was the man can hide the bad parts of himself. That's not true because you can meet in real life, not just over the internet. But moreover, if you can hide bad parts of you in real life, surely that works for non-important brides as well. I'm not sure why this is an exclusive harm to important brides. This also misrepresents our case because you were very clear, Matthew. Yes, these women do get to choose what countries they go to. That's how it works in status quo. So it's not a forced choice to go to a certain country. Moreover, we don't think it's unequal. Even if you rely on the man for money, maybe she relies on you for companionship. But moreover, just because you are relying on someone doesn't mean they will abuse you. I don't work. I rely 100% on my parents, but they don't abuse me. And even if they did, I wouldn't hesitate to go and report them. We don't think that relying on someone necessarily means that you wouldn't report them for abuse. So this takes down their argument on this whole owing a debt to the man. Even if this was true, it doesn't lead to abuse. The next line of analysis that they dropped in second speaker, what I wanted to revive in third, was that it was an illegitimate choice because of desperation. This is false, because desperation doesn't equal to coercion. We gave you a parallel in the POI, how they would still allow unemployed women to get married. Here's another one. We allow poor individuals, no matter how desperate they are, to sign contracts to get a job, for example. Because we recognize that even if you're desperate, that doesn't mean you can't make choices for yourself. The final thing they tell us is that women give away their rights to self-determination. They parallel this to selling yourself for slavery. Guys, this is not true. You're not buying the woman as your property. When you marry someone, you don't own them. We don't think important rights is you owning the woman. So don't let them use the language that you're buying these women for property. That's not what we stand for. This is a legitimate choice, when that slavery is a disingenuous conflation. Child marriage, another disingenuous analogy, because children obviously cannot consent under the law. We've proven that this is not an illegitimate choice, so women can consent. It's not child marriage on our side. No thank you. On our side, we recognize that this choice is legitimate and only the woman's to make. So don't let them pretend that they gave women a choice when their policy dictates one of the choices that is most fundamental to these individuals. What have we proven? One, this is not an illegitimate choice. Second, we protect choice even more. Here's a further extension. If we can prove economic upliftment on our side, presumably that gives women more choices in the long term. Let's do that right now. My second point of contention on helping vulnerable women. I'm first going to refute the bulk of the analysis on abuse, which also takes down their second speaker substantive. We told you that it wasn't true that imported brides had abused any more than any other marriage. We don't think it's fair to characterize all these husbands as abusers, because Matthew gives you compelling characterization as to how these husbands actually are looking for emotional companionship. Their very glib response was, oh, why don't you just go on Tinder? We already told you that in countries like China, in geographical areas with much more men and women, there are no available partners. So if you go on Tinder and you search in your area, the page is blank in many places in China. We think that because of these skewed gender ratios, we don't think it's possible for many of these men to find a partner. Yes, they are looking for emotional companionship. So it's not really a majority of imported brides who get abused. Yes, we sympathize with those who do get abused, and we are never going to stand for that on our side. But it's also important to understand that non-imported brides sometimes get abused too, and that's equally horrible. But that doesn't mean that we ban marriage for everyone. Moreover, we do have a mechanism to ensure that abuse in these cases is even lower than regular marriage. Garrett's substantive about international accountability. Their only response was, oh, there's already international attention. Yes, but this misses the point. There's already international attention with Vietnam and Singapore because imported brides are legal. When you make these things, when you make imported brides illegal, it means that there's no more international attention because no country wants to acknowledge the problem. This was a real harm that they had to engage with. Moreover, we told you in Garrett that other alternatives to get opportunities are far more exploitative. Prostitution, indentured servitude, even if you don't turn to illegal importing, these alternatives are far more oppressive. We told you this in Gareth, no response in their third speaker. Then they conceded in their third speaker that they said that abusive marriages occur even when the man meets the woman many times. Exactly. So how on earth is their argument exclusive to imported brides? Hold on. Even if they concede this, then presumably the abuse of imported brides is not more than abuse of anyone else in society. Yes?
The majority of cases of domestic violence will never report it because they are afraid of this power structure. Imported brides also are financially dependent on the man and they have no social structure. How are you ever going to protect cases of abuse?
We think it's unfortunate that women who are dependent don't report these cases of abuse. But we're not sure how anything's going to change on their side. Presumably, they also allow women who are poor to rely on their husbands on their side. I'm not sure why this is any different from imported brides. In 3 speakers, they haven't given us a single exclusive harm to imported brides. My final response to this point of abuse will come in my final point of contention to prove the abuse is way worse on their side. This also takes down their under-explained second speaker substantive because we've proven that if there's no abuse, the state is not complicit in this abuse. This perfunctory analysis does not stand. So how do we help vulnerable women? I think the fact that women want to do this suggests that it's beneficial to them. Then they say that immigration rules are good because they only let people who are rich enough in. Yes, but then what about all the vulnerable women in the developing world who are too poor to be let in? What are we going to do about them? No response from their side. We told you that imported rights usually go from developing to developed countries. This is important because they get more opportunities, more economic upliftment. What was the comparative on their side? We think that developing countries are way worse for women even on their metrics because men tend to be more abusive in developing countries. There tend to be less regulations against abuse in developing countries. If they really cared about abuse, then how come their comparative is so much worse? The only line of reply in third speaker is, this will be more important. But we think that in these cases, we think that subjugation increases and choices decrease. The comparative is way worse on their side. Now let's go down to my final point of contention on human trafficking. The only response was that human trafficking is the same because women still get kidnapped. This is not true. It's way worse on their side because women are going to voluntarily put themselves up to smuggling rings on their side. That was not a real response. Also, don't let third speaker brush this aside. This argument is crucial and fatal to their case. And I think we win the debate on this alone. Why? Because all the harms they described are way worse. There's no legal documentation to prove the woman ever consented. There's no checks to ensure these women are even overage. There's no ability for the woman to report abuse if you're an illegal immigrant. If they cared about consent, if they cared about abuse, they stand for human trafficking, which is far, far worse. Do we think that this choice is legitimate? It benefits women. Even if it doesn't, they make it far worse. We enable dignity through choice. Very proud to oppose.
8 minutes, 6 seconds.
Now here we are.
It's unfortunate, but no one in this room will ever truly be able to know what it is like to live in poverty. The fact of the matter is that many people live lives around the world that are much harder than the ones that we live on ours. But I think it's important to recognize that that does not mean that these people lose agency on either side. It's important for us to recognize that these people should be empowered to make choices. Because it's not the job of a government, not the job of someone else to tell you what you ought to do. It's up to you to make the judgment of yourself for what best helps you with the best possible life. And leading on side opposition, we empower you to do that. I want to take a walk through the two worlds that emerge at the end of this debate. And I want to show to you why the world of opposition not only didn't solve the problems that they started out with, but exacerbated them significantly. It was a world where this option wasn't open to women in the developing world. So what happens then? A desperate woman might, for example, go to a smuggling ring and say, please smuggle me into this X country, and via doing so, I'll give you a certain sum of money. She is there under the promise and the belief that she'll be able to, once she hits the ground running in this country, find a job and hopefully send money back to her family. The problem and what she doesn't know is that because this option isn't open to her, it's in their world when she's smuggled into this country and instead coerced into things like prostitution or human trafficking because of the fact that they have her passport, they have a deposit. All of these things are reasons as to why in their world they make things so much worse. The other possibility is say the woman does in fact get to this country as a bride because the demand for such goods still exists. If that is true, then the world of proposition still makes it significantly worse. Because when she is abused, she cannot report it. If they want to talk about support structures, they lose all of them on their side of the house at the point in which she cannot be telling any police. Because if she tells the police, she gets arrested. They don't do anything with even if she runs away on their side of the house. She's now stuck in a foreign country with absolutely nothing that she can do. So to be very clear, are these women going to make their lives better on the world of proposition? The answer is no. And the fact that they have not even responded to any of our analysis from first opposition, except for glib one-liners that just show that they're not understanding of how human trafficking works, suggests that they make the world so much worse on their side of the house. But I also think it's a world of proposition where the comparative isn't that much better. If they do get married in the developing world, often such situations like dowries, for example, mean that very similar situations exist, and are they stuck in the developing world where there's significantly less support structures for women and societies are significantly more patriarchal. So to be clear, these women are unable to escape poverty in their world, but not only that, they make it so much worse because of it. So for these reasons, the world of proposition doesn't help women, they increase the suffering that they go through. So let's transition away from the world of proposition and talk to you about the world of the opposition. We recognize that sometimes in life there are no good choices, just choices that are less worse. We recognize that the choice for you to say that I want me and my children to grow up in a society that has a functioning police force, I want to go to a society that has a healthcare system, I want to live with a man who's able to look after me. All of these things are choices that women are perfectly legitimate to take. And we in society allow women to do this all the time, whether it's like prostitution or even pornography. All of these things are choices that women are able to make on our side because we dignify them with a very choice. To say, look, we recognize that you get economic benefits via doing this, it's completely your decision to make. Moreover, it was the world of opposition that ensured that the women that did get brought into these worlds get placed into places with men who actually wanted to care for them. We gave you structural reasons as to why a man who would choose this option is likely to do this for reasons of companionship. Because if you didn't do this, you would do so much other options that didn't involve literally marrying someone on their side. We were a world that was able to be registered and regulations for all of these issues. We were a world that was able to give women the adequate support structures that they needed via international attention, registries, and government oversight. You don't get that when it's illegal because they have an incentive too high. We believe that on our side of the house, we dignify women with choice. We're proud to oppose.
4 minutes, 14 seconds. You are called upon the proposition.
Side opposition isn't dignifying women with a choice, but it's locking women up in abuse that these women can never exit. This is what has come out of Team Estonia, and we think that we've been successful in proving that. Why Team Singapore has nitpicked examples and told you why in maybe a minority of cases their case might stand. Two things I'm going to talk about. Firstly, why coercion inherently exists under our side, and they haven't been able to fully and substantially respond to this argument. And secondly, why abuse is extremely likely to occur in these instances, and why this is the biggest harm in states. Firstly, coercion. They give out you like the least substantive points of rebuttal. They first tried to frame us out by saying that agencies exist, which I think are still problematic, because these agencies are not the way real relationships are formed, and these women are still going to give a full sense of what these men are like, how these men behave, and how these men are going to treat these women. This is the biggest harm that we've been, this is one of the harms and mechanisms that we've been defending since our first speech, and they never respond to this in their 4 speeches. But moreover, we tell you that agencies further create a false sense of security in these women, that nothing bad can happen to them because this high level of regulation exists. We tell you that these men still can be harmful even with these agencies, and they never tell you why these men might not be, or why other reasons haven't existed. They then try to tell you that these women have to leave their family behind. I think that this is where Team Singapore gets quite messy. Because when they say that these women are trying to exit financial distress and save themselves, I think that this is going to be outweighed, this family point is going to be outweighed by their own characterization. But we think that it's moreover problematic. They don't respond to the fact that these women are more likely to believe that they can help their family under our side, because the information that is fed to them by this man is one of prosperity and happiness, of wealth and progress. This is what makes these women believe that they can help their families, and they think that they don't have to make this comparative. These women are always going to be given a wrong sense of understanding of what they're getting into, are going to be coerced into thinking that the ideals they already have of Western nations are fully true, and that everyone there will treat them to the best of their abilities. These women are given a wrong understanding within this reason why they can't actually make a choice. The harm that they protect is the women staying in their countries. Notice that these women still retain their free will, but moreover that they don't drain other options away, which does happen under side opposition. We've told you how this is an irreversible harm that these women can't get out of. These men and women can't make judgments anymore, which means that they actually limit the liberty of these women, which is an argument we've been making continuously throughout our speeches. The black market they try to describe is fundamentally going to be smaller than a legal option of getting these women into your own house and then subjecting to the abuse that they're going to get into later. Self-determination is a pillar of happiness, and they are taking that pillar away, that they can't actually say they are dignifying these women with a choice. But moreover, on the point of abuse, they never engage with our strongest analysis. They only provide you examples of, for example, Chinese cultural norms. And while they might be true, they never tell you why this should be the majority of examples. This probably isn't the majority of examples, especially when they try to tell you that importing rights is going to help most people out of poverty in those nations, which has been the argument they've been making throughout their speeches. If the extent of benefit is so great under their side, they can't simply talk about Chinese men in rural areas. But moreover, in those cases, they have to prove why these men wouldn't go to other measures, such as, for example, simply finding a bride in a different country, actually building a relationship with them, and then bringing them back to their own country. This isn't the same as paying back women and making them subject to coercion, which is what's going to happen under their side. We're told that these men have other opportunities, and even if they don't, they're the minority, and we think that the reality is different. These men aren't buying, is what they tell you, but we think that these men use money to get a wife, which seems a lot like buying to me. But moreover, not that they are buying these vulnerable women who are going to get all of the benefits from this man that has taken them into their home. These women can't say to that man that I'm now going to move away, because all of the benefits they describe to you are derivative of this man existing, giving this man the highest authority in the eyes of that woman, and creating an environment that this woman can never escape. They say that we don't have an exclusive harm because abuse already exists. In what world is this a reason to not ban a practice that brings more of a horrible thing? Their case is the one that doesn't bring their exclusive benefits, and that's why they fundamentally lose.